Ms. Rodney in the PC caucus, continue sharing your time, or?
Well, we have 10 minutes in this segment, correct?
Yeah.
So if we can go back and forth, Minister, we'll do that.
Okay. Please proceed.
You know, we left off dealing with Indigenous relations and your department. I wonder if we could turn to page 52 of the business plan. It's outcome 2, which states the systemic education achievement gap between First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students and all other students is eliminated. Obviously, I completely support this, and I applaud the work, and we need to get this done. It's a 3-part question, Minister, and so perhaps you can just see the topics within. First of all, during estimates last year, you were speaking about on-reserve students, and you said, and I quote, "We know that there's more that we can do to support our families and to encourage our students to attend school." So I'm looking forward to finding out what results you might have had from then to now in this area, and wondering if you see an increase in graduation rates amongst Indigenous students for this year or the next year going forward compared to last year. Second question in this vein is, noting that performance measure 2E seeks to measure the percentage of self-identified First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students who complete high school within 5 years of starting grade 10. Now, there seems to be a problem here. Perhaps there's an explanation. The last time there was a metric for this was 2014-15, and that was actually before your government took office. So maybe there's a quick and easy answer to that, because of course, if we're going to do something about it, we need to be able to measure it.
Yes.
And then the last part, last question on this line related to page 52 is, what specific supports has your ministry enacted in order to support students who do not graduate within the allotted 3 years but would still like to finish their high school somewhere like Centre High here in Edmonton, where I believe the current education minister used to teach?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit. Well, thank you for all of those questions, and certainly we can see that we've set ambitious goals for improving graduation rates and attendance rates for schools, for students in First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students, self-identified. I think that we have seen on a board level in a number of places initiatives that have demonstrated success. Whether we have numbers for this year, I need to get back to you on that, member, honourable member, please. Yeah. So I don't have that right at the tip of my hands, but I certainly will give it to you. I believe that by being more flexible and having alternative programming for students, not just in the big cities, but in other communities is very important. I've seen more high school completion opportunities coming from different colleges, like Lakeland and Fairview as well, and Olds and Red Deer. We know that we've had some success. We've engaged with an interesting not-for-profit group called Frontier College that works in the summertime with kids to have a summer camp school, right? And I went out to visit one at the Paul Band, and it seemed really successful. So I mean, we know that again, it's a go-forward situation, but by focusing our attention on Northland School Division, we will be it's about a 97% First Nations Métis population in that school board, and we know that we can make some market improvements by focusing money and time and on this school board, but mostly because the results in attendance and graduation are so low right now that you will realize the improvement for sure, just because the situation is not good at this, to start with, right? So yeah, I mean, I believe that it's important to set a goal, long-term goal, to equalize the graduation and achievement standards for all students in the province. I know that it's an ambitious target, but I also believe that it's the only target that we can set ultimately, that every student must over time be achieving and improving the achievement of our population in an equal and just manner.
Okay, let's move on to key strategy 2.4 then, and I look forward to your responses to the other questions as you suggested, perhaps later in writing.
Which one, sorry?
It's
Honourable member?
2.4. Collaborate with education stakeholders,
Oh, yeah.
communities, and other ministries to strengthen First Nations, Métis, and Inuit education programs, policies, and initiatives.
Yeah.
Four-part question. Let's get to whatever answers you can provide in the time that we're allotted here today.
Okay.
First of all, having culturally competent staff is an integral component of ensuring our education system is inclusive for Alberta's Indigenous students. I'm sure we can all agree on that.
Absolutely.
So, question one, what's your ministry doing to improve the cultural competency of teachers in Alberta, specifically related to Indigenous history and culture in Alberta? That's question one. Secondly, how does your ministry work with Advanced Ed to attract more Indigenous students into various teaching programs at PSCs across Alberta? Thirdly, what's your ministry doing to work with Advanced Ed to increase the number of Indigenous professors in our teaching programs at PSCs across Alberta? And finally, for this section, what is your ministry doing to attract and retain more Indigenous teachers at school boards across Alberta?
Excellent. I can follow your line of thought, and it's sound.
Thank you.
I think that
Let's hope the answers are too.
in regards to, well, they have been so far, that's for sure. I think that for us to have an educated population of teachers and support staff and administrators in regards to elements and the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and Indigenous history and culture is absolutely essential. And build, as I've already talked about the agreement that we made with the national TRC and to achieve this, but we're also embedding this expectation in the standards that the teaching quality standards that we'll be putting out here straight away for teachers and for administrators and for superintendents as well. So we are formalizing that into quality standards, an expectation for all teachers and the other groups that I had mentioned. And so in order to do that authentically, we need to reach into our post-secondary institutions to have that programming built into their teaching of teachers, student teachers, and for their post-secondary instructors themselves to have those same standards built into their systems. And so while I'm not the advanced education minister, I do have a regular interaction with the teaching training colleges here in the province to focus in on that. And indeed, I have had specific conversation with them very closely, very recently, asking, and with bated breath, excited to have the teaching quality standards entrenched into their own post-secondary curriculums. And so we know that our First Nations Indigenous Studies programs at the University of Alberta, say for example, have been strengthening their position considerably in the last number of years. And we know as well that the success of school boards such as Northland, in no small measure, depend on our ability to attract and to train and to retain First Nations teachers that can be the pivot point for these schools and this school board. Not just teachers, but also administrators, First Nations administration. And so we've been in conversation with the University of Alberta to have a administration program for training principals and superintendents, First Nations, in these school boards too. So I think that's an important thing to do. I mean, it's modeling for the kids. It's showing respect for the community. it's the partnership writ large by actually putting those leaders into the place. So we do have an FMNI teacher bursary program with the University of Alberta. It's $1.7 million. And we are expanding to, I mean, I think a big part of showing respect is to
Apologize to interrupt, Minister, but we will
Not
be
buzzers
moving
going
on.